Good morning and welcome to Hiring Our Heroes Virtual Career Community Feature Friday. My name is Marnie Holder, Director of Career Summits and Virtual Events, and we're excited to have you with us today. For those of you that have been joining our sessions over the course of the week, I do want to let you know all of our sessions are being recorded and they are going to be posted to our website, hiringourheroes.org/career-community. I'll go ahead and restate that at the end as well, but just want to let you know today's session will be recorded. So if there's anything you want to reflect back on, you can go ahead and hop on our website. Also, down at the bottom of your screen, you will see there's a Q&A feature and a chat feature. We're asking that anyone that wants a question to be covered or addressed during the presentation to post that in the Q&A portion. And we will go ahead and monitor those questions and toss those out to our presenters as we get started. All right, let's go into our Feature Friday. Today, we're doing an employer connection with Lockheed Martin, who really are leaders in the veteran, military, and military spouse hiring space. As a national level employer and certainly well recognized on many levels, they are really leading the way on all initiatives and have some great information to share with you and what they're doing to target, recruit, and retain service members, veterans, and military spouses. All right, let's go ahead and get started. It's truly an honor to introduce our first presenter today, Chuck Hollingsworth with Lockheed Martin Professional Development. He is the Military Vet Business Resource Group Chair, and he will be our host for today's session. Chuck, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marnie. I appreciate it. And a good morning to everyone joining us, whatever time zone you might happen to be in. It is our absolute privilege to be here with you this morning. I think we've pulled together a very diverse and representative team from Lockheed Martin. And I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and you get a sense for our different background. As Marnie mentioned, I am at our corporate headquarters here in Bethesda, Maryland. I happen to work in the business development function, and I focus on the professional development of our function. That's the day job, but where my passion is, and relevant to this discussion, as Marnie mentioned, I am the chair of our military veteran ERG, Employee Resource Group, or some companies call them BRGs, Business Resource Groups. We may use those terms interchangeably with you today, ERG or BRG. For those of you that may not be familiar with that, let me just tell you in the macro, and we'll probably talk about this more as we go forward, but as you work on your transition into a company out there, if that's how you opt to transition, let me just tell you, the number one thing that I hear from people that they miss about the military service is the people and the camaraderie. And so I just want you to be aware of the fact that most large companies out there have ERGs, just like Lockheed Martin does. And there is your chance to plug into that community that you're going to find yourself missing so much about 6 months after you transition. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. I want to give you a chance to meet the other members of our team. So let me turn it over to Keith for quick introductions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Keith Freeman. I'm the Director of Mission Operations and Sustainment for Space. So there are multiple different business areas within Lockheed. I work within side of space. We do mostly satellite and military communications and intelligence. So I have a group of about 1,100 engineers that are deployed across the globe, mostly working in government sites. So thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, and let's continue with Ray, if you could introduce yourself briefly.
Yeah, definitely. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to be part of the panel. Ray Domingo. I started with Lockheed Martin last year, October, and I actually lead the global technical recruiting for RMS side. And David actually and I talked to, when I first started, and I found out about the LM Heroes. And what's crazy is I actually reached out to military team prior to me starting. And it was something that I was definitely passionate about, and accepted to help LM Heroes, and I'm going to be leading RMS side for LM Heroes, and I'm definitely passionate about it. When I talk about it, I tend to get excited, so definitely excited to be part of this panel. And my specialty is I recruit cybersecurity, systems engineer, and also software engineers.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. And now let's move on to our next panelists and have them introduce themselves. Dave Wallace, who I call our perennial cat herder with a lot of this team. Dave, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, and welcome everyone, and thanks, Chuck, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Dave Wallace, kind of like the guy from The Office. I am the Military Relations Programs and Partnerships Manager, and the one thing that I'm passionate about, same thing with Ray, something that I get to lead, is the Lockheed Martin Heroes Program. That's in partnership with the Hiring Our Heroes Corporate Fellowship Program, along with working with the individual service branches across the organization in identifying skill bridge opportunities. You'll hear skill bridge, career skills, tomato, same thing. But opportunities there helping transitioning service members, along with working with wounded warrior fellowship opportunities for military spouses and military caregivers, and working with student veterans and apprenticeship opportunities. So I look forward to the questions and speaking to all you today.
Very good. Thank you, David. He is a busy guy with all these veteran-related programs we have at Lockheed Martin. Denise, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. So I am Denise Golden. I'm Senior Manager with Global Financial Services. So I'm basically a bean counter for the corporation. I am based in Lakeland, Florida. So right now we are getting pounded by rainstorms. But so hopefully we don't lose our electricity. But I also am part of corporate. So enterprise operations is just a fancy word for corporate. And Chuck is the chairman. I am the lead. So for the area of Lockheed Martin that's considered corporate, I'm the lead for the military veterans BRG. I'm also a military spouse. My husband was 20 years in the Air Force. And so I represent that faction of the military environment and community, and like to give voice to what military spouses have to offer to our veterans, as also employment with Lockheed Martin, as I've been a 15-year employee for Lockheed Martin. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Denise. And we really appreciate the spouse voice that she brings to so many of our conversations. And so let's see, is that it for introductions? We catch everyone? Yeah, I think so. Okay. So so back over to you, Marnie. I don't know if we have any questions yet.
Sorry, no questions yet. Go ahead and just jump right in.
Okay. Dave, why don't we have you, because it is your primary. By the way, for everybody looking at all the tiles here, you'll notice the predominance of red with our team, including in my tie and all the shirts here. That's because here at Lockheed Martin, we've got throughout our sites, we have a thing called RED, remembering everyone deployed. And so we encourage our members that are out there, when they can, to wear a red shirt as just a visual reminder to the rest of our workforce, really who it is that we're serving, who it is that we work for. So Dave, you have lots of exciting things going on in this area. So let me turn it over to you a little bit to unpack a little bit some of the actual programs that we're supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. What's great with this panel is we talk consistently throughout the month, sometimes weeks, sometimes daily, on a wide variety of things. So you'd be really amazed when you reach out to one person and how the networking really shapes and takes place. I know you've heard networking over and over again in your TAP class. It is a benefit. So make sure that you keep that in mind, because you never know who knows somebody else. The different programs. First, I just want to talk about the military relations team real quick. I'm part of a 6-person team that covers a wide gambit of diverse areas, regions, and we all have our own things that we are very passionate about and help as a team collaborate together, where we have 3 military relations managers that are globetrotters that go across the country. You have Charles Delaney that covers the East Coast side. You have James Shelton that covers the central region, especially down in Denise's area and in Texas. You have um, uh, Anthony Gilbert, who covers the West Coast. And in fact, he was our very first fellow graduate. Now he's part of our team. I'll talk very shortly about the fellowships. We also have Jason Boone as our digital transformation god, so to speak, that covers all the technology side, pushing different initiatives out there like our Lockheed Martin Serves program, our Handshake to Hire, and other digital transformation activities behind the scenes. And he's also the new community manager of Military Connect. And then we have Betsy Adams, who is our newest member of the team. And Betsy, she is probably the best asset that I could ask for in the behind the scenes. She is a military spouse fellow graduate, and leading by example. Our military relations team brought her on board, and she's leading the military spouse outreach efforts and hiring and working with people like Denise and others across the company. Very quick, and if there's questions about it, we can. Yes, Lockheed Martin is engaged in fellowship opportunities in the SkillBridge program. What we've done is we've actually put the SkillBridge program and other initiatives under one umbrella. One umbrella, so we didn't confuse our internal partnerships and our managers and everything of, hey, what program should I choose? We're giving them bodies. We'll tell them about the individual subcategory later on. But 3 of our primary subcategories are SkillBridge oriented to hit all the different angles of how you can work with the fellowship opportunities through the SkillBridge instruction. Whether it's working with Hiring Our Heroes in the corporate fellowship program, working with the individual commands through the service branch authority and command length, or working with the wounded warriors, which could be a very short, very quick boom. We've got like 30 to 60 days to identify a host and work with able allies and diversity inclusion to make sure we have all those accommodations in place. We're utilizing SkillBridge to the utmost degree. Doesn't mean we don't have growing pains, and it doesn't mean that we can identify a host for everybody, but we do our best. And we do have additional outreaches for apprenticeships. We have outreaches for military spouse fellowships and for military caregivers, and apprenticeships are along the way. And I think that's enough right now. I don't want to take over the.
Yeah. No, Dave, there's a question in the chat there from Ted G. And it's a good, since you're talking programs now, sometimes people can get the different programs. There's multiple layers of them, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So he talks about the difference between the Ellen Heroes program and Handshake to Hire. Can you just give a 30-second sort of differentiation between those?
Yeah, the Lockheed Martin Heroes is SkillBridge. It's the SkillBridge opportunities or the fellowship opportunities itself. Just keep that piece in mind. This is actually giving you a one-on-one conversation to help identify you transitioning out and trying to identify a fellowship to get yourself segued into the company. The Handshake to Hire is more assistance in my description of helping internally segmenting all skill set nets into different silos so we can allow people like Denise or Keith or Ray, when they're looking for talent, to easily go to that bucket of talent that's segmented and go in there and identify potential candidates. It helps us internally.
Yeah, very good. So what I'm hearing, I'm a hiring manager. I'm specifically looking for a cyber specialist like Ray is, and through this system, I can let you know that, and you actually give me tailored resumes that I can sort through and really
Exactly.
accelerate my ability to hire somebody.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
Very good. Thanks, Dave. There's a question there I think any one of us could answer. I'll pitch it to Denise because it's really talking about the COVID-19 posture we're working in, right? All this remote work, and someone is asking here about our own business continuity, and do we foresee a long-term shift to more remote opportunities? Give people, Denise, a sense of our culture right now around remote work today, and this is an opinion, but what you
Yep.
think it may be looking like as we go forward.
The leadership has had a lot of discussions about this, especially this week, because obviously, there's a lot of talk about going back to normal, or at least trying to go back to normal starting May 1st. So discussions have started at the corporate level. And honestly, as a military spouse, I think one of the smartest decisions I ever made looking back was to become an accountant. Because being a military spouse, I was able to go into every single PCS with my husband and find a job as an accountant for any industry. And so when it comes to finance and accounting, nothing is better set up to work in a virtual environment than being a bean counter. And honestly, Chuck, even with business development, a lot of what you do is meetings and having conference calls, and there is face-to-face, obviously, but it's not that your job can't be done virtually. I think the biggest impact to our corporation has been to those that require to be in the office, which basically is the assembly line. And we do have those operations still up and running. They had to obviously put a lot of protocols into place. They even went into various shift work so they could, gauge who was going to be in the building at a certain time and shift the assembly line so that they could have round the clock work, which they normally do anyways. But I would say that going forward, it certainly has proven the business case for telecommuting. We never thought we would see corporate, honestly, working from home. Didn't think that would ever happen in my lifetime. But overnight, we literally flipped a switch and everybody started working out of their kitchens and their living rooms and in their offices at home. The good thing is that most of us already had laptops. Most of us already had the ability to log in, have internet connectivity. So just the transformation was already underway. So fortunately, we were in a good place, and we honestly had one of the best quarters for the first quarter of 2020, and it just goes to prove that Lockheed Martin didn't miss a beat. So I honestly think this has opened the door for more telecommuting and more flexibility for working from home.
Very good. Very comprehensive response there, Denise. Appreciate it. Keith, do you have anything to add to that from your perspective?
Sure. From my perspective, I mean, most of my people are on government sites and we're working in classified environments. So the one thing that we've been able to do and what we've been looking at is we have kind of split our shifts up and brought in more separation between the employees, and also with the militaries that we're working with to really just reduce that risk. And I think that posture that we have, where we are now finding ways to do work differently and actually I'll look at it and say become more resilient, in that we are moving people into different parts of the building and doing work a little bit more virtual inside the same building. I think that's going to stay with us. I think it is the right posture to be in, where when the next crisis comes in, we're going to be ready for it better than we were this time.
Very good. No, that's a great insight for us to think about the fact that we have everything from the typical office work that Denise is talking about to assembly line work to things behind the classified door, and we've had to have different responses for every one of those different areas. There's a question there about disabled service members who've had either a long time of recovery or retraining before they're able to come into the workforce, or just say someone who is let's say you're a 20, 25 year experienced professional, and you may not see a real clear translation between tank driving, for instance, or what it was you were doing in the service, that MOS, into, that translation of skills into the corporate world. Any advice to our listeners that find themselves in that position? Because it's not unusual, right? Dave, you know that. All of our panel knows that sometimes there's as much art to science as translating your incredible service to our nation in uniform to add corporate value. So who would like to offer some perspective on that? Ray, do you have a perspective on that? We're thinking about that individual that feels like they've got to do some retraining to make themselves relevant.
No, that's a great question. With as a tank driver, for example, there's a process involved. So, I mean, just because you're a tank driver, what led you to become a tank driver? I'm pretty sure you had to do some logistic work, some kind of planning process. I'm actually connected with one of the leadership for Black Rifle Coffee, Dan Horgan, and he's actually a TACP, so he retires as TACP in the Air Force, and he translates his skills even though he was TAC-P, but the thing is, he was able to lead a team. He was able to create processes as a program manager. So definitely just thinking outside the box is a key. It took me a while after I retired from the Air Force because I was a cop, electrician, and then 12 years as a recruiter. But translating that skills and thinking outside the box to where, what all did you do? What overall aspect did you do as a tank driver? Like I said, there's a lot of process involved, a lot of logistic background that you've done also. But the main thing is trying to pinpoint on certain job description and looking at the basic requirements and trying to translate whatever you've done in the military into those basic requirements. And titles are so different. They're so different in civilian world. With recruiting, Air Force recruiting the last 12 years, talent acquisition, is a title, sorcerer is a title, so it's completely different from being a military and civilian. So hopefully that explains it a little bit.
No, that's good, Ray. I appreciate that, and I would encourage all of our listeners to think outside the box from a certain perspective of what it is you did or have done in the service. In other words, it's not just about MOS. Sometimes, a lot of times, it is those collateral duties that you did along the way. The fact that you were a training officer, that you were a safety officer. These things that if you don't really sit down and make yourself think about them, you're not even going to recall them. A lot of times it is those duties that can be the absolute key. That's actually, I got hired by Lockheed Martin, not because I was a pilot. But because of some other collateral duties I'd done along the way. So I would just encourage you, really sit down, force yourself to think through everything you've done, and recognize that a lot of times what a corporation like Lockheed Martin is looking for is not just the technical, the functional, but the soft skills that go along with it. And one of the things that you really bring to the table, I think I can say this universally about so many of you, is teamwork, is leadership. It is these soft skills that, quite honestly, you're better than you think you are. You are better than you think you are. You have learned more throughout a military career than you may recognize. So find a way to capitalize that in your discussions, in your interview
Yeah.
in your resume.
Chuck, just to add on to that, my two current fellows that we just brought in Las Cruces, New Mexico, both came from Fort Bliss. They're both Apache helicopter pilots. I have nothing to do with Apache helicopter pilots. What we brought them in for is just that their leadership and the way in which they engage with teams was something that we severely needed here at the site. And we knew we could train them. They had the background, they had the ability to learn. So we wanted their skills that they had in those soft skills more than we wanted somebody who knew what we were doing as far as the program. So we can train them on the program. They brought in a lot on that soft skills.
Yeah, and that's something that, I'm going into the Lockheed Martin Heroes Fellowship and fellowships as a whole. Keith Freeman's like our rock star when it comes to identifying fellowships. I mean, I never have to worry when a cohort or something comes out. I'm always like, okay, how many is Keith doing this time? It's always like that because he does see that outside of the box thing, and through his examples, I've been able to utilize and reach out through our advisory committee, through other outlets, just letting other people, other hosts understand that you can think outside the box and bringing fellows on board for opportunities like exactly like how Keith explained.
Mm-hmm. That's good, Dave. While you've got the mic, Dave, there's a couple of questions in there about veterans that have already transitioned. Maybe they're already in a corporate world. Maybe they're working
Mm-hmm.
for a small business. Let's just clarify for our listeners how we think of veterans. Is a veteran someone that's transitioning right now from the service, or is it broader than that? Because I think that's the gist of the question we're getting.
A veteran's a veteran's a veteran. You've done one day of service, you're a veteran. Okay. Or, unless you're on active duty, I mean, you're still considered in. But, if you're out, whether you've done one day or not, a lot of times what I see too is that National Guard and Reserve don't consider themselves veterans. A lot of them don't. And I'm sorry, actually by definition, if you've done more than 30 days, technically you're considered a veteran, and everybody went through boot camp. I don't know of any boot camp, even the Air Force, Ray, that is less than 30 days. So, even our Air Force brethren, and I joke about that like we all do with inter services, you're considered a veteran and you're very valued within our company. So, no, even though you're a veteran, there's no handouts when it comes to hiring you. We do at Lockheed Martin have an average of 1 out of every 5 employee is a veteran, guard or reserveman. So you have that, but we do look at the best and the brightest, and look at the ones that match those skill sets. It just happens to be that because we're a defense contractor, a lot of our great candidates do come from the veteran community.
That's good. Thanks, Dave. There's, and I'm going to come in a minute. There's a question here on contract versus permanent positions, and I'll come to that one in a moment, so y'all can be thinking about that. But there's a string of questions from different people, the gist of which, Dave, really being about how to reach out and get contact. Can you help people a little bit navigate our Lockheed Martin website a little bit? How some of the best ways in. I like to talk about it as sort of an HOV lane into the company for veterans. Can you give folks a little bit of overview on that, on how to best reach out?
Oh, was that to me, Chuck?
Yeah, Dave, if you
Okay.
don't mind. I think you're the
Yeah, I
most
mean,
familiar.
okay, so basic thing, you can Google, you can go to www.lockheedmartin.com. You want to look in the careers site, go into careers. You really need to do, no matter what company you're looking into, do your due diligence and research the website. Do the ins and outs, look at all that. If you're looking for specific programs, we have that. There's keyword searches. So, you can definitely, find out a lot about what's available. If you're looking at trying to identify a specific person, the best thing you want to do is LinkedIn. Okay, you can type in, you can look. Once you start growing your network, people are going to pop up left and right. Okay, what I would suggest saying is that, if you're out there and you're trying to identify a hiring manager or a lead recruiter, I will tell you my rule of thumb. I do not give out phone numbers. I don't do that. I will forward a resume, and if the candidate is something that that lead recruiter and hiring manager is interested in, they will take the onus and giving that part out. We don't like opening Pandora's box and what I call the cyber stalking out there. And I say it jokingly, but in a sense, we do have a job to do. And we can't help everybody. So you kind of minimize that. Ray, I don't know how he does it because he has thousands upon thousands of people in LinkedIn. But, LinkedIn is the best way for us to communicate, to be able to drive it. Even though we're a recruiter, we don't know everything. It's the analogy of what I look at of, okay, I was on an aircraft carrier and somebody said, oh, do you know this person? There's over 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier, and you may or may not, depending upon your division or whatever, run into that person. So we can make introductions. We can ensure that especially on the military relations team, we can ensure that your resume is being reviewed by providing a special message through our applicant tracking system to the lead recruiter and manager. So they review. But asking for a hiring manager, that is the secret sauce that I do not give out because, we would be flooded, never be able to do our job.
Okay. No, very good. So there's a question here. Let's clarify for folks. There's a question about contractual positions versus permanent. And does Lockheed only hire for contractual positions? Because people see that as as a tenuous job security, right? Here they've been in the service for 20 years. If there's one thing they know, it's security, job security. That's probably one of the biggest areas of angst that people have in this transition. And so this individual, Brian, is asking about contractor versus permanent. Who would like to speak to that? None of us here are necessarily HR specialists, but I think we can probably speak to that. Ray, you got a thought?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Prior to Lockheed, I've done a lot of contract positions for different companies. So as far as contract roles, it doesn't go through like Lockheed Martin recruiters. It's actually another third party. The difference between contract roles, between full-time roles, the contract roles, there's also opportunities to convert to full-time roles. So, and that likelihood is pretty high also. So that's definitely the difference. If you're going through contract role, typically a third party is going to reach out to you and let the hiring teams review the candidates and the candidate pool, and then they would select somebody for that contract. And like I said, though, typically contract positions, you have the ability to convert typically around maybe 90 days or so, or maybe more, depending on the role. But yeah, that's definitely the difference between contract and full-time.
Okay, Chuck, if I could address that as well. So I came into Lockheed Martin as a contractor. I had a friend who worked for Lockheed Martin. She was doing a software implementation, needed help. She knew I was looking for work. So she said, I can bring you in as a contractor. I worked in the Lakeland office for 6 months and was in the right place at the right time when they decided to transition a Maryland office down to Lakeland and hired 100 people. So I already got to know the people. I got to know the operations. I had a login. I was working and I made the right connections so that when they were ready to hire, they already knew what I was capable of. And I was the only leader that they hired out of that entire group. So being a contractor is a foot in the door. Right. And honestly, in finance and accounting especially, we prefer to hire contractors or interns to kind of test people out, because it's not just about skills, it's also about job fit. We want to make sure that the person we're hiring is the right job fit in our culture. And that you can't tell on a resume. So if you have the qualifications, the basic qualifications and the behaviors and the experience, like most veterans do that we're looking for, all we want to do is see if you're the right fit for our company. I would say most of the positions that we post, either internships or contractors, easily 75% of them become full-time for us.
Mm. That's a great data point, Denise, and thanks for sharing your own personal experience with that. That's actually should be very encouraging, I think, to a lot of folks out there. That if you've identified the company that you would like to work for, and we like to think of ourselves as an employer of choice, but no matter who it is, like you said, going contractor is a way in, and then you can continue to sell yourself. Security clearances. So there's lots of a lot of our jobs require security clearances. There's a couple of questions there. Joe's got one. Hey, we no longer, had one, don't have it any longer. Um, and many of the jobs are requiring an active clearance. What can somebody like that do? Because now they're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Their clearance has elapsed. And yet the job requires a clearance. Any thoughts on that, Ray?
Like David was saying, I saw that in the chat, there are roles that are hard basic requirements to where you must have some kind of clearance. So like I said, I recruit globally. So I recruit for a team in Colorado, same exact team. I have one hiring manager. The roles that he has in his team all require clearance with certifications. And then I have another hiring manager, same exact role, but it doesn't require clearance and it doesn't require certifications. So that's a bit, the main thing is definitely just doing your homework, definitely research, check out the job boards, because they're out there. There are roles that that don't require clearance, don't require certifications. And then once you get into Lockheed, get with Lockheed Martin, you have to have the ability to get clearance, which means U.S. citizen. And then also you can actually work on your certification. So, and from my experience alone with Lockheed Martin, it's a mix of, there's roles that require clearance, there's roles that require certifications, at the same time, there's roles that doesn't require clearance and certification.
Very good.
And
Thanks, Ray. Good
and
advice.
sorry,
Go ahead, Dave.
Chuck. Keith, if you could add a little more, because you and I have had this discussion a lot, not just with hiring our heroes, but just with you giving me a lot of insight on your end from your experience. Could you add a little more to that, please?
Sure. I mean, so it also is on how long has it been since your clearance was, has ended. If it's within a year or two, we can usually turn that back around and get it back engaged real quickly. If it's longer than that, we have to start the process over. But one thing that we do is on our recs, you'll see it says that you need to have a clearance to start instead of a clearance at the time in which we make an offer to you. So if you're the right fit, we will actually make an offer to you and say it's contingent on getting your clearance back. And so we'll wait the 6 months or whatever it takes to get that clearance back to get you in the door. So we will work with you if you have the right talent and the skills that we're looking for, and it is that clearance part that you need. We will work with you to get that clearance part.
And
That's
one
good.
other little thing, Keith, can you also, with your experience, vast experience with the fellowship programs, can you talk a little bit about that security clearance part as it relates to the fellowships?
Sure. So on the fellowship side, we have most of my programs are on military bases. There are a little bit different clearance requirements on the military. For the contractors coming in, we have to have polygraphs. For the military, they don't. So when we bring people in, we bring them in as military, have them come in as part of the military force, and then have the military bring that person onto our program. And then we start doing the fellowship as if that person is just a normal Lockheed Martin employee. So we find ways in which to work with the military to make it so that the clearances that you have and the abilities that you have on the military side, or allow you to come in and work on the contractor side.
Very good. No, I appreciate that, Keith. And just to foot stomp something you said there that it's not missed, that if you've ever had a clearance, it is certainly easier for those agencies that have to go back and do those background investigations. One, it's a good signal that you had one, even if it's got, and it's actually easier and cheaper to go back and regenerate one if there's been something in your background. So don't think it doesn't count for something even if it's lapsed. Let's talk about, again, translation. There's a question in there about basic qualification, and I think are they hard and fast requirements when somebody pulls up that job rec and they're trying to figure out if they're a fit for it. And again, some of this goes to that whole translation of military to civilian, right? And a lot of times I remember what it was like. You read this thing and even the basic quals seem very civilianized, right? It's a very civilianized language, and people are struggling to figure out how to translate that. And so do I even apply to one if I'm not sure if there's a perfect fit on the basic quals, much less the desired quals? Any thoughts from one of you on that, just based on your own experience? Go ahead,
Um,
Keith.
I was gonna say I can start with that one. So just so everybody understands, when we have recs out, we have recruiters, and those recruiters go through resumes and try to align the basic qualifications to the resume. So my biggest advice here is when you see the basic qualifications, make sure that there's very well highlighted in your resume so the recruiter can see, okay, yes, we have that, we have this, and that way that resume goes forward. And as Chuck's saying, when you look at it, you may look at it and say, you know what, I don't have a vast knowledge of logistics, but you know what, I did logistics in these areas. Bring that out in your resume so that it comes to that recruiter. We're looking for skills. We're not looking for, you don't have to be an expert in every BQ that we have. We're looking for somebody who has that broad knowledge. So in most cases, I would say, just make sure your resume shows those qualifications, and that should get you through the recruiters and into the hiring managers.
And I would add, you definitely want the BQs, like Keith had said. The desired skill sets can bring you over the top. The more desired skill sets you're able to add in there, also knowing the difference between a federal resume and a corporate type resume. The federal resume would blend in like there's no tomorrow for us when we're looking at things. And it's great if you've got if a sleeping disorder, but it may not be so great when you're trying to break it out. So we do like seeing that bulleted format where it looks pleasant on the eye when we're actually looking through it on a computer. Also numerical value. You want it justifiable, you want it accountable, you want it results oriented. There's nothing wrong with looking at the basic qualifications or any of the things that you have on there from the requisition, adding that, and then adding that numerical value to that piece. Number of people you led, percentage increases, value of equipment you've overseen, things like that. That is always great things to add in there, and there's great ways of being able to even translate your military skills. There's programs out there like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Hiring Our Heroes, resumeengine.org. It gives you a great way of going in, plugging in your MOS, NEC, military occupational code, and branch it out and just get a starting point. Having that starting point from that basic foundational tool will help put you light years ahead of the regular person, because there's no such thing as a resume expert. There's a lot of great coaches and a lot of great advisors, but it's subjective by company and subjective by person, all the way up to the hiring manager. So you just have to know how to adapt.
Good. Ray, did you have something to add to this conversation?
Yeah, no, definitely. So what I like to do is whenever I review resumes, I control F. So look at the basic qualifications on the job description, and then certain keywords within the basic requirements. Let's say must have experience in system engineer or system engineer, right? I would just control F on somebody's resume, and that's my fastest approach on scanning somebody's resume. First off, do they qualify for the specific role, system engineer role? Because if they don't, then I'll move on to the next candidate. So that's the biggest thing, is definitely look at the basic qualifications, and control F your personal resume also, along with the basic requirements for that job posting, to see if you do qualify.
Very good. I'm going to just follow up. There was one question in chat about security clearances and when they translate over the timing and everything. Just so everyone understands, companies like Lockheed Martin, our security clearance program, we are essentially a surrogate of the government security clearance program. So the timelines, the requirements, 5 years, 10 years, SBI, BI, all that, we are a carbon copy. We comply with the government's security programs. So those timelines and those sorts of things are going to essentially parallel whatever the current government policy is there. I'm going to come to S. Sweet here in a minute, asking about veteran employment representative for a specific county out there. Dave, I'll come to you for that one. But before that, because I actually don't know the answer to, someone's asking about, are we still hiring interns for this summer? And I actually don't know, and I wonder if any of you may. Denise?
So I can tell you from a finance and accounting perspective, because I do a lot of college recruiting, but obviously military veteran recruiting, we have some experienced professionals that we recruit for. And I would say that at this point, most of the summer internships, at least in F&BO, finance and business operations, have been filled. The fact that we are probably going to be a virtual environment over the summer has limited the capacity for us to hire people we would normally bring into the office and train the cultural environment to. So yes, normally by May, we have already handpicked, I mean, we start our college recruiting in January. So normally we have our people picked for the summer, but that does not mean we're not hiring for the fall. So there are internship postings out on LockheedMartinJobs.com. So look for those if you are looking to go into an internship starting in the fall.
Hey, Denise, one additional question with this that popped into my brain, because I see this a lot. Can you explain to people the difference between an internship, a fellowship, and an apprenticeship?
Oh, heck.
I'm sorry.
No, Dave, I think you need to decide, Mr. Recruiter.
No, but I mean, with your experience, and anybody can really chime in, but, talking about, what those differences are, because people don't understand that, especially when it comes with somebody that's so senior to getting out and they go, I'll take an apprenticeship, I'll take an internship. And, um, we believe in you retooling and learning a new skill, but you're not going to like the pay if you try going down to that part, and nobody's going to accept you for that based on the years of experience that you'd have. So maybe that might assist a little bit for anybody
Well,
on here.
I can say that, internships, which is what I deal mostly with, I'm starting to understand better fellowships and apprenticeships through Dave. But what I would say is, for an internship, you have to be actively enrolled in school. That could be an undergraduate, that could be a graduate program, but you have to be actively engaged. Once you graduate, you are no longer eligible. So if you were to graduate this May from an undergraduate program, unless you're enrolled to start a graduate program in the fall, you would not be able to do a summer internship. The good news is a lot of our internships convert to full-time positions once you graduate. So again, great way to get in the door. Apprenticeships, like Dave was saying, my understanding is a lot of times apprenticeships are a way for you to come in and learn a new skill set, usually at a lower pay amount. So if you're military 20 years in and you're retiring at a higher rank, higher pay, but what you did in the military doesn't necessarily translate to what you want to go into for a position with Lockheed Martin. You might have an opportunity to come in as an apprentice, but again, one, you might not get the position because you truly are well overqualified. You shouldn't really be coming in at that level. Or two, you're going to come in and be making peanuts. So that's my understanding of apprenticeships.
Yeah.
Fellowships, Dave will have to talk more details to that.
Yeah, and I think people are familiar with fellowships, but I can say just a little adding on with the apprenticeship piece. We are partnered with the Department of Labor's apprenticeship program and working with our workforce development. And what I would say for the apprenticeship side, if you're, a military veteran, this is a very good opportunity for that first term service member getting out that may have been not in the field of choice of what they had for whatever reason while they were in that time frame. And this gives them an opportunity for great skills opportunities going in there and then eventually getting an opportunity. So that is something that I'm actually working on, one of those wonderful programs that Chuck talked about at the beginning. So too many programs for an hour to talk about, but that's one good thing. The fellowships is really utilizing your current skill set, and you're just transitioning over, and you're getting that time to learn the culture. You're getting that time to actually see that fit and kind of understand where you kind of settle in that business area. That's what these SkillBridge programs does with these fellowships. When you bring the people in, it gives you the sense of what Lockheed Martin has. It takes away what normally takes about 90 days to learn when you first come on board. So when you actually get hired, which our program has an 86% hiring rate, conversion rate, you're able to start day one making that money for our organization. So that's the huge benefit for what fellowships can give.
Very good. There's appreciate that, Dave. There's one question there, and I'll generalize it because it's a little specific, but it's from somebody who is putting some effort into helping connect veterans. He's a local veteran employment representative and wants to help people locally be able to find a way to connect to our organization. Let's address that one, Dave. And then what I'd like to do, we only have a few minutes left. I want to be able to come around and ask everybody to reflect yourself on your transition, and let's offer our audience what you would do differently.
So you're talking about the levers, and those are all across the country. Myself and the rest of the military relations team always welcome reaching that out. I know Ray's had the experience probably with working with levers out in San Antonio. These are great representatives where you never know when somebody's going to come through. It's a networking opportunity. So what I would say to any levers out there, the person that asked that call, reach out to myself. I could give you the information to the other military relations team and some other people like the Rays and Denises and Keiths of the world, and they can help provide as we segment out and reach that out. It's very simple to do.
Very good. So I do want to allow a little bit of time here for some personal reflection. There's still a lot of comments in there. People looking just ways to reach out, ways to send a resume and that sort of thing. And Dave, I think your advice, just basically get to our website. There is specifically a section there for veterans. You don't have to approach it as Joe Civilian, so to speak. You use that veteran lane there as a way to come into Lockheed Martin and start this conversation. But I want to ask all of you, Ray, we'll start with you and just go around. However many years ago it was that you transitioned, as you reflect back now and putting yourself in the shoes of a lot of our listening audience, what would you do differently in this process?
No, that's definitely a great question, and I do a lot of virtual workshops now that COVID is happening. Right, I'm actually doing 2 virtual workshops for Carla Miller and also Victoria Harvey this coming a few weeks. It was crazy because I retired back in 2015, November. Retired in California, and I thought I was gonna be perfectly fine. So we decided to move to San Antonio, Mill City, USA. I thought it's gonna be a lot easier. My 11-page resume wasn't working out. I wish there was something like this, some kind of platform like this, but I didn't know what I didn't know. Military recruiter, away from a base. I was attached to Travis, so it's about 3 hours away. So we pretty much left the Air Force blind, moved to San Antonio, and it took me 7 months. It took me 7 months to find a job. Never interviewed, but yeah, I wish I would attended platforms like this to learn, to listen, especially from folks that was already fully retired, already transitioned out, with settled in civilian world. I think that's the biggest thing that I would have wish I would have done. And another thing is, I wish I would have started early, like networking, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a free site. Create a profile, you build relationships. I wish I would have started doing that prior to retiring, or even after I retired, because I didn't really get active on LinkedIn till I say 5 months after retiring, when I was like, already at that point to where we got to get something going. I told my wife. But yeah, so that's the biggest thing that I would have done. I wish I would have done was start networking, started attending these types of platform, whether it's virtual or actual events.
Very good, Ray. Thanks. And I know how that conversation went. That was your wife telling you you need to get something going. Yeah, I know how it goes.
Yes.
Keith, how about we only have a minute or two, so maybe just 90 seconds of what you do different.
Well, it's interesting because I was never in the military. So
Oh, okay.
I've been with Lockheed for 32 years. In that time, I've always worked with the military and been on military bases. I think the one thing that I would have done different in my career is I found out about hiring our heroes maybe 5 years ago. I wish I would have known about the programs earlier and been able to engage, because the employees that we're getting from the military are such a high caliber. I wish I'd have known about it earlier.
That's good. Well, thank you for being such a champion for veteran causes, Keith. I didn't. I just always assumed that you are a veteran yourself. Denise, how about you? Just a quick advice nugget.
Honestly, like looking back, there wasn't anything I would have changed other than maybe pursuing my master's degree. I'm grateful that I had my undergraduate, and back in the day, virtual classes wasn't as easy, especially moving around a lot. You had to enroll in classes, be there. So since we moved so much, I wasn't able to pursue that. But it did not prevent me from moving up and prospering and doing great in my career. So honestly, accounting and finance was a good, sound spousal degree to pursue, and has been very successful for me.
All right, very good. Dave, 90 seconds.
Yeah, I actually got out twice. So I found out the hard way what not to do the first time, and the second time around I learned from that for the final 13 years of my military career. And it was all about networking and truly paying attention in a much better improved TAP class at the time. And the networking landed me my job at Lockheed Martin on the very first day of transitional leave. So it's always right place and timing.
That's great. And the one thing that I would offer, my nugget, would be because sometimes we of the military mindset have to work through this, is that people want to help, but they don't know that you need help if you don't ask. And so getting over that, or working with the can-do attitude that so many of you have and have had for your entire career, we have to set that aside and let people help. And if you, sometimes it's uncomfortable the first few times you do it. Have those informational interviews and let people know, this is my timing, this is where I am, and this is what I'm looking for. I'll turn it over to Marnie here in just a second. I just want to ask a smattering of, there's a smattering of questions out there about, hey, I'm a PhD, I'm an academic. Hey, even though we're an engineering company and we have about 65,000 of the greatest engineers in the world in this company, there's everything here though. HR, organizational development, change management specialists. So wherever it is you're coming from, I would say still look. because we're 110,000 people and we have the whole gamut in this company. So please take a look. You don't have to be an engineer or technician to get a great job here at Lockheed Martin. So with that, Marty, I'll turn it over to you.
Wow, I would say big round of applause, virtual round of applause. That was a great session. Kudos to Lockheed Martin. You covered a lot of ground there. And for those that were online, thank you for all those questions. We ran the gamut, and especially a lot of the veterans who have transitioned out already. I thought we really did cover some good meat and material. So well done. And so for those of you that perhaps joined late, or if you have others you want to share this session with, again, go to hiringourheroes.org/career-community. But if you go to our main page, you'll be able to navigate to where all of these recorded sessions are at. We look forward to having Lockheed Martin join us again real soon. For everyone else, we do have programming Monday through Friday. So if you do go to our website, there's a schedule of all events Monday through Friday. Transition Tuesday, it's focusing on what you need as far as the tools and tips, resume prep, know your value, all kinds of tools and tips to help you. You talked about networking, doing the virtual networking with LinkedIn. So that's a great session. I skipped over Motivational Monday. We have awesome speakers. This Monday we have Brigadier General retired Carol Eggert, who now is NBC Comcast Universal. She will have some motivational remarks. Wednesday is health and well-being. While you're looking for work, and certainly in this time, I think that's a great day to dedicate to not only you, but just relieving stress during this time, and might be good information for you to share with others. Thursday, we've got some industry overview sessions, and then Friday, we'll have another Feature Friday. So please get on our website and register for those upcoming events and share with all of your friends. And thanks again to Lockheed Martin for just a phenomenal session. Great way to end the week. Bravo.